everyone. Thank you so much for coming over.
For having me.
Excellent. So one of the first things I would notice is like we have this great set of perspectives from all of you. John, you're from NVIDIA, the world's leading provider of AI infrastructure and software. And Sanjeev, you've been transforming a large Fortune company. And then Jay, you have this unique view of sort of as a VC across the whole industry and firsthand sort of knowledge of the hype cycle and sort of also where to sort of join the hype cycle. Yeah. And then Patrick, you on the ground, data science team, getting work done. So thank you all for coming and providing a perspective. So maybe I'll start with you, John. You know, everyone knows NVIDIA as the world's biggest GPU maker, hardware excellence. But I know that you and I have been working together and our team's been working together for nearly 2 years now on building this platform. And one of the big things that was surprising to me actually is how much enterprise software NVIDIA builds. And so I wanted to sort of get your take on sort of like, what is the nature of what is driving this enterprise software investment and why do you do it?
Sure. So as you imagine, as a hardware provider, we need to enable an ecosystem. People don't buy GPUs, they buy applications, they buy business outcomes, as we've been discussing. For many hardware providers, that means they're going to write a driver. So we've kind of taken that to the extreme. Not only have we written drivers and very complex drivers that work across systems and across the data center, but we spent a lot of time building technology up the stack. And the concept we talked about earlier for the enterprise AI factory, there's actually 3 workloads in an enterprise AI factory. There's agentic AI, there's physical AI, as you move into robotics and sensors and digital twins and those types of things. And then there's high performance computing, scientific computing, all which runs within that enterprise AI factory. And then of course, many other applications in different industries. VDI is a great example of that with virtualization. But if we think about specifically the agentic AI platform, it kind of comes down to 4 important things that I think it'd be important for everybody to understand. The first one is around models, right? So it all starts with models. NVIDIA supports all of the open source models, all the open models, whether it's Llama or GPT, OSS, or any of the models that people are looking. But many people are surprised to find out that we actually have our own framework. So I always tell people that when you're talking to ChatGPT, chat is just how you interact with it. The model's called GPT, and a lot of people don't know that. Yeah. And so our model is called, our framework is called NeMo, and our models are called Nemotrons. And so one of the things that we do is we can take an open source model like a Llama, and we can make it better without losing any of the characteristics of the open source model. So we can make it smaller, we can make it faster, and we do that using our framework. It's called a Llama Nemotron. And then we also can add in reasoning. So, with DeepSeek earlier this year, everybody really realized what the possibilities were for reasoning. But some people don't want to use DeepSeek alone as a model. So we can distill the reasoning out of DeepSeek into a Llama Nemotron model. So now you have a Llama Nemotron reasoning model. Right, and just last week we introduced another version of that. So it starts with the models, and we give you the best models, and I think some of them we've even shown in the demo. And then we put the models in a NIM, which is an NVIDIA inferencing microservice. So we make it easy for users or developers to call the models. And then those NIMs aren't just for the open models. We actually have, as part of our NeMo framework, we have a set of NeMo microservices that do everything from retrieving to embedding, that allow you to create RAGs very easily, to do evaluations of the models, to do guardrails of the models, all based on this concept of a NIM. And then, lastly is really how do we take those to help our customers deploy them in the context of a DataRobot platform through the use of blueprints, right? And so we have a library that we affectionately call NATE. It's the NeMo Agentic Toolkit. And so NATE allows you to work across any agent platform. It's not actually an agent platform. It connects all the different agent platforms, provides observability, and allows you to look through different connections to remove bottlenecks, to optimize, et cetera. And so all of that is something that we've been working on together as part of your platform. So it's models, NIMs, NeMo, and Blueprint.
That's awesome. We talked about the agent workforce platform and sort of working with NVIDIA. What we love is that we're a relatively small company, but we have the full power of all the work that you've done with the support, with your sort of warranties around sort of making sure they're up to date, optimizations, and it's sort of embedded in the platform. So we sort of get the benefit of all of that right off the bat. So that's been sort of...
Absolutely. All of that, of course, comes with full enterprise support, backing, bug fixes, patches, specific releases for production and deployment.
Yeah, if there's one thing that bothers the IT team is like open source software that has vulnerabilities, and someone says, okay, this happened, like who's supposed to... No one's in charge with open source, and you have to sort of, it's a do-it-yourself project. So it's great to have sort of a single throat to choke, so to speak, in us, and then after that, sort of we'll sort of escalate to you to sort of make sure that the right things come in.
That's right. You choke him, he'll choke us.
That's right. It's an escalation. I wanted to just sort of ask you a little bit on sort of like this idea of like NVIDIA building so much software. How does that sort of get seen in the broader industry, and sort of what do you see from your side?
Yeah, so I spend a lot of time thinking about what the end market structure is going to be. Because you have one example from the internet and the cloud computing days, but things are evolving so much, right? At the bottom, right, in NVIDIA with CUDA probably kind of captures a lot of the value. And then there was a whole debate about what was going to be in the middle, and there was Anthropic, there was OpenAI, and there are all these open source models. But we at some point thought that these models are kind of going to get commoditized, but what Anthropic and OpenAI has done is they have rapidly become application software companies, right? Like in my mind, OpenAI is almost like equivalent to Google, because ChatGPT kind of drives a lot of their revenues, just like Google search. And then of course they have their API services, right? And Anthropic is kind of reverse, more like Microsoft, where they have most of their revenues coming from enterprises, and then they have Claude, people use it a little bit, right? But the question is, how does that ecosystem evolve beyond that? Is there going to be a place for open source models, right? Or is everything going to be kind of converge in these 2 or 3 companies if you include Google? Because if you believe that it's only going to be 3 models, then a lot of things go away. Like, do you need all these inference providers? So we kind of spend a lot, and then we also are trying to imagine how further up the chain is OpenAI and Anthropic going to go? Like, there's 11 labs out there doing all of these speech to text, there's text to speech, but OpenAI is also working on these things, right? So it's, and so we try to kind of get analogies from the previous generation of what happened, like, hey, nobody made any money on frameworks because you had to buy observability around that, but LangChain is doing a big round, right? So these are some of these things that I sometimes struggle with, and versus the junior partners, because they have never seen this, right? And when you tell them, hey, CoreWeave, probably will end up like Exodus or at some point and trade as a REIT, people don't believe me. They're like, hey, it's trading at 30 times, we should have invested at $1 billion valuation when it was getting done, and I know NVIDIA's corp dev called everybody in the valley and nobody bid, right? So some of these things are, it's hard to kind of, for us, we have to make investments and return capital in like 3 years, 4 years, right, whatever. So it is kind of interesting, like what is a good trade versus what is a long-term nature of the market.
Excellent. I'm going to change topics a little bit, sort of going from sort of the market dynamics. Sanjeev, I know you sort of touched on it. You talked about sort of talking to your, earlier we talked about sort of talking to your CHRO about like digital employees. Sort of pull that thread a little bit, because you talked about how, they're going to be in charge of new sets of employees.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think, look, we have classified our employee base into 3 parts. One is we are calling, and we can make it simple, right?
Yeah.
So it's just architecture simple, right? Let's say a talent architecture. So because that's very critical, and as Patrick was saying, people need to be inspired for the future, right? To make this change, to adopt or embrace AI. So there are 3 things. One is AI builders. These are the people that we normally would know, the people who are data scientists, people who are data engineers. So that's one segment of the builders, and they are building stuff, and we are growing that segment because we need more of them in the future. Obviously, they're also getting a lot of help from AI to kind of, like a lot of data stuff is, quality stuff is now being done by AI as well. So, but I think that's the first cohort. The second one is, we call it AI practitioners, which means in the future, all our people who are running operations, whether they're in finance operation or supply chain or procurement or something, or insurance underwriting, these people will have a blended skills and will be very easy to work with AI. Like they should be transitioning and cross-skilling themselves or working with new systems. Let's put it easy way, right? So that work is going on in a big way. And the third thing is AI itself as a workforce. So those three components. So I think the way we are doing is that I may have discussed earlier, but our CIO is responsible for building and managing the internal AI workforce, right? Technically.
Yeah.
And I'll call it technically.
Yeah.
Right? Operationally, our business owners, like for example, our CFO, is accountable for managing the AI workforce, which is operationally working under him, because he should know how many he should have. And by the way, he has a dashboard now.
Yeah.
You've given him a dashboard saying, you know how many people are there, right, in your system now. Because you should know that when you're expanding, when you are letting your people go to a client work. The good thing is in our business, we also do work for the clients. So we don't have to let people go. Like we can just move our people, internal people, to the client side. That's all, right? So that's a nice thing. And the third thing is who's finally strategically accountable for this? And that's where the chief leadership and chief HRO came in.
Yeah.
Because you are the person who's going to plan for the next workforce of this company. So you plan for all three workforces. And I think that's the way that's where the chief listening officer has a name. And a reporting line to the CHRO.
Nice, very nice. I think it's really fascinating. I think we've used this sort of that idea of like anthropomorphizing agents to actually sort of talk about the life cycle, but you guys have really sort of implemented that at sort of scale. John, maybe I just sort of riff off that. I know Jensen has been talking about like IT being sort of managing the digital workforce, and I like how Sanjeev is saying, yes, they're going to create it and run it and everything else, but they report into the business. Do you have thoughts on that? Sort of how you've seen it in conversations?
I think it's still emerging. I think the concept, of course, of onboarding agents, of treating agents as if they were employees, makes a lot of sense, right? So you start with an advisor or a co-pilot or whatever the right tool is, and I think it's going to depend on the actual function. We have a lot of engineers who are using tools to help them code in AI. I don't think like that HR is looking at the coding tool, right? But there might be somebody working in the finance department, supply chain, et cetera, where it may feel more like that employee relationship.
That's awesome. I think the one sort of takeaway is like, we're still very early. It's like day one, so to speak. And so there's lots you're going to learn. And so I wanted to sort of maybe turn to Patrick a little bit and say, Patrick, you're where the rubber hits the road, where like you're literally implementing these things day to day and making sure that those bubbles sort of move from the left to the right and become green. Tell us about how you are thinking, and I think maybe I'll sort of do a composite question. You already did a lot of work, and you talked about forecasting and things that you're already doing and sort of predicting maintenance. So those are sort of more classical ML. And so there's a lot of investment that you already have there. How do you think about moving from that world of sort of data science, you're building models and solving these really material problems into this agentic world where they have a role, but it's a much broader role? How do you think about that?
Yeah, I mean, if we look at what's the difference between pre-agentic AI to agentic AI is the expectation that agents will do stuff. Right? So where we always talked about having a human in the loop with pre-agentic AI, the human is gradually being extracted from the loop step by step. You could, in some instances, go so far as to close the loop entirely, right, and have it entirely based on the agent itself, right? And so that's the big difference in expectation. And so what does that mean for people like us who are building those agents? So first of all, we have to understand the task that the agent's supposed to be doing far, far deeper, because we're no longer saying, hey, dear human decision maker, here's the AI model output, you go deal with the problem, right? Now the agent has to go deal with the problem, which means we have to understand the problem. Second thing we have to do is integrate that agent with all of the various IT systems that are necessary that may not be agentic AI, that may not have nothing to do with AI at all. They may be the inventory system, the SAP system, the HR system, and various other things. Either pull data from them or, God forbid, write data into those databases proactively, right? And then the third element really to get there is to generate trust. Trust among the humans that have just been extracted from the loop. And their human reporting line that has to sign off on the fact that they've just been extracted from the loop, and this agent is now going to materially affect your business, either by paying money for something, or really materially in terms of ordering things that will be delivered and things of that nature. So generating trust, I think, is really the key element here. And if you've generated the trust, then it makes it easier to do the integration, which costs money and people, and then ultimately to make the decision to interact with the business to understand the problem enough that they can codify it for an agent to do. But those are, I think, the three key steps to get there.
Excellent. Maybe, Jay, I'll sort of have you riff on this, because there's so much we hear about sort of consumer agents and sort of like sort of the hype and things like that. Thinking about a little bit of an enterprise, you've heard every day today, so much depth in sort of understanding the people stuff, the data, the integration to the infrastructure. So what do you see in the industry on that front? And sort of maybe a little bit on where you see DataRobot.
Yeah. And so I think there are certain places where, people are already doing it, right? Like the voice thing is very common. People, customer support, right? More and more people are using voice, like, voice agents to take customer support. But I think the challenge is the IT departments are trying to protect all these agents from doing stuff, but tools are just coming in. You can take like the relevance, or you can take something else and you start connecting into your SAP system. I was talking to a CIO, and the CIO was like, well, my SAP system slowed down. I didn't know why. And they found out that there were 30 or 40 agents that people had just written was just hitting the SAP system, right? And all of a sudden. So I think the adoption within the enterprise is still pretty low. Of course, people are using it for productivity tools, right? Yeah, summarizing a Zoom call, or writing code, or writing email summarizing, performance reviews. All of that stuff is being done. But what you were saying, that the trust is not there with these agents to kind of go and do things. So I still hear from larger company CIOs is that I can't deploy this agent because I don't know what it's going to do, right? It's what it's going to respond, how it's going to hallucinate. But on the other hand, there is so much momentum that it's all going to get solved, right? And I think this is where I'm kind of preaching to the choir. DataRobot has a pretty good vantage point in solving all of these things, right? Because you have the platform, you can enable people to build agents that are trustworthy. You can build things that enable people to have always human in the loop to kind of verify what the agent has done is actually true or not. Although the problem is that, again, you need to verify the humans have actually verified it, because I see in the coding side, in the code review tools, people just check in stuff without, although the human is supposed to review this other person's code based on all these coding tools. But yeah, so it's like a process. I think the enterprises have just started going, and I think just like everything else, people are going to start using it without the blessing of the IT. So I think the people who run IT or who are trying to put guardrails have to be aware of that. Like, people are going to bring in tools and start using these agent builders.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I think it is, enterprise adoption is going to be hard, and we are on that journey. That's kind of what we are talking about here. So maybe just in the last few minutes, I want to sort of get maybe a quick round of questions from you. So what is your one piece of advice to the audience of both practitioners and CIOs and C-suite on sort of this transition as we go to an agent workforce?
Well, as I've said, really deeply understand the business need. Look at the value, look at what the agent is supposed to actually do. The technology is out there, so DataRobot will supply you with the means to get it done. So focus on your business rather than focus on all the technology. And comparing the different large language models, they're all roughly the same in terms of their goodness, right? What you need is the platform to stitch all the pieces together and deliver you a fully functional product, which DataRobot will do for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think CIOs have a tendency is to lock down things. I don't think you can do that, right? I think right now people are just going to adopt all these agents and all these agentic tools that's out there. So I think you just have to be very nimble and say that, hey, things are going to change, the architecture of all of these things are going to change. So build things, let your employees and your users kind of start using these agents, but just make sure that you build it in such a way that, as things change underneath it and as security things bubble up and people implement security and guardrails, that you can implement those as quickly as possible.
Very cool. As a CTIO, what is your advice?
Look, I think, as I mentioned, let me just rephrase that. I think the time is now. The time wasn't earlier. The time wasn't last year. And the reason I'm saying is because now you don't need to have a hammer looking for a nail anymore. Like, you don't have to be technologists to kind of sell an idea to the business. In most of the clients that I've met, it's a board level discussion already. So pressure is from the top to the CEO. CEO is actually being asked to respond, saying, what are you doing with AI? Now, I think somebody has to pick up the baton in the leadership team, and say, we will drive it together with sponsorship of the business, whether it's a CTO of the company or CIO or whosoever has or chief digital officer, like whosoever is responsible, they have to just go and put a business case and act fast. And I don't think there will be a perfect answer. There's no perfect answer ever has been for any of the technology waves that we have gone through, whether it was ERP earlier, 20 years, 30 years back. People learned with experience and they made mistakes and they figured it out how to implement an ERP system. I think it's or internet or mobile applications, frankly. I think it's going to be the same here as well, but the time is now. I think it's very acting fast and learning fast will be the only way to get yourself, generate the value that your leadership is looking forward for and that's what it is.
Awesome. John?
I actually thought I had the perfect answer. Apparently there isn't one, so. I think, for us it's, keep going, right? Like, keep pushing the boundaries. You mentioned a couple different, sort of personas of CIO, CEO. Stay in lockstep. Every employee will benefit from AI. So you have to figure out the right way to do that, how to unlock that value, right? And those that, that aren't using AI will, get outcompeted by those that are.
Yeah. Awesome. Thank you so much. And please give a warm applause for our panelists. Thank you so much, and thanks to panelists.